Hello and welcome to the Post2Post podcast. It is podcast number 50. My name is Neil. I'm joined here with Brent. Hello.
My name is Brent.
Your name is Brent.
Number 50. This is a demi-century of podcasts.
Whatever you said.
Wow.
Sounds good. We were going to do something special for this podcast, but instead, we're not going to do anything. Instead, we are going to make this a little bit shorter than a normal podcast. So,
What?
Not that great of a number 50, but we're doing it for a very important reason because we took the opportunity today to film stand-alone videos, so the original Post2Post format. So we've done a test over the past 2 weeks of doing fairly decent podcasts and splitting them off into podcast highlight videos and releasing those. And unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of time to film regular Post2Post videos and release those. So the channel's been pretty stagnant over the past 2 weeks, and but unfortunately, it was the best that we could have done in the past 2 weeks. You were doing stuff and I was doing stuff. We just didn't have time, and that sucks. But so it was a bit of a failed experiment. So we're not going to do that anymore. What I'm going to do is create a third channel specifically for Post2Post podcast highlights. So if you don't care about our regular videos and you don't care to watch our full podcast and you really just want to see the highlights, you can subscribe to that channel. It's not created yet, so don't ask for a link. I'll link it maybe in about a week in the next podcast. I need to create it and create graphics for it and everything, but I'll get that up and running soon. So we did film some standalone videos today. We're going to do it again tomorrow because it's a holiday here tomorrow. So there will be the next 2 weeks for us, and hopefully for you, should be pretty good. Should get back to the roots here on Post2Post. The other thing that we're going to do is upgrade our audio quality. And you might say, and I've heard this before, those mics sound really good. And they do sound pretty good. These are $30 mics from Amazon, but here's why they don't sound good. If I move this arm, and can you hear that? I know you can because I can hear it in my ear holes. And so we bought mics that are actual like broadcast quality mics. They're on the way, and we're going to switch things around as far as really the whole channel goes. Sorry, see? Now, what's going to happen is, or what eats a lot of our time is, when we do a normal video, we use the table that he's at there pushed over a little bit for you audio listeners, and you probably know from visualizing our regular videos. We have to move all the lights and the camera over to that setup, and when we want to film the podcast, we have to shift everything over here, which is fine, but it is time consuming, unfortunately. It takes like 20 minutes every time I want to do it, and it sucks. So what I'm going to do is take this table, reverse it into a V, kind of like Tim and Sid, if you're familiar with Tim and Sid. We're going to sit at an angle to the camera, so I'm going to be kind of sitting, usually I sit face on for normal videos. I'm going to be sitting more of an angle. You're going to be at the same angle, and we're going to use those mics, and not only for the podcast, but for every video. So every video is going to look the same as the podcast. The podcast is just going to be longer, and it's going to be a different format. But all the regular videos are going to look like that. You're going to have awesome audio quality for every single normal video, and not that Rode mic that's there. I don't know if you can see it in the screen or not, but because when we bang on the table or even tap the table, it's really, really bad with that mic. So we're not going to use that anymore. We're going to use quality mics, and hopefully the production quality will be right where we want it for the most part. I mean, things can always change and stuff, but the desk is going to take a little bit to get used to. But it's going to
be good.
It's a step in the right direction.
We'll be sitting in roughly the same orientation we're sitting in now, but the desk will be angled in this way and angled out that way.
Yeah, we'll be a little closer together. Yeah, a little bit. So that's to cut down on time on our end that you don't see in between videos and rearranging and stuff, which will hopefully lead to more content for an extra videos. Because if we don't have to take that 20 minutes and rearrange, we could bang out another video in that 20 minutes. So that's kind of why we're doing it and trying to be a little bit more efficient. So that is the reason that today's podcast is shorter, because we wanted to get back to the roots and film some normal videos, and we can't do that and also film like an hour and a half long podcast. So we're kind of taking a step back a little bit. The other reason why this is going to be short is because today is Remembrance Day, or Veterans. Is it Veterans Day in the United States?
Veterans Day in the U.S., Remembrance Day in Canada.
Yeah, and
that's right.
The NHL.tv is actually free today, and it's a really good chance for me to watch hockey. I I don't get to watch a lot of hockey. I try and watch a little bit of one game every single night. Sometimes I get a chance to watch 2 games. Today is going to be a really great day. I'm going to try and watch like 4 games today if I can, which is the first time in the season that I've been able to do that. So that's really important to me, because if I'm not watching hockey, then what's the sense of making doing these videos in this channel and this podcast?
And in my case, I won't be watching hockey because I don't have the time. I have a NASCAR video from the Phoenix race that I'm PVRing right now. I've already PVR'd the Formula One race from Brazil, which I haven't watched any of it yet. I have no idea who wins that. I know where they qualified because I watched yesterday's qualifying. So I have a lot of work to do myself before I even get to hockey.
Yeah, you do.
So, yeah.
So, what's going on in NASCAR anyway?
They're down to the Final Four.
I was going to say that. I know they're close.
They're working their way to the Final Four. Kevin Harvick is doing well, and Kyle Busch is doing well. There's a few drivers that are still in the hunt.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's narrowed down to those 2 or 3 or 4 guys.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, this is going to be a bit of a shorter podcast. I do apologize for that, but
it might end up not being shorter.
Oh, you got some stuff, do you?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes we get talking and things just so don't oversell the shortness of it. You might get people's hopes up.
Sounds good. The first thing I want to talk about is just some game recaps over the past couple of days. Mm-hmm. Friday night, I know you didn't watch this game, but Columbus played Washington. We spoke about this earlier. I was telling you about the game. Yeah, it was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Last year they played in the playoffs. They went to 6 games, I believe it was. And this was like the 7th game. If you watched the game, you know what I'm talking about. Bobrovsky was unbelievable. If you didn't watch the game, if you haven't watched the highlights, go onto NHL.com. Go to that Friday night, the Friday night scores. Click on the Columbus-Washington game and click on videos and watch the game recap. It was awesome. Awesome game. One of the best games I've watched this year. Yeah. As far as Saturday goes, which was yesterday, we're filming this on a Sunday, so yesterday's games, there's quite a bit. So we're just going to go through these game by game, just give a quick game recap. So Vancouver played Buffalo, and that was a very interesting game because Vancouver was out to a bit of a lead, I believe 3-1, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
It was 3-1.
I think it was 3-1.
3-1, yeah.
And Buffalo came back, ended up winning 4-3. They showed resiliency for the first time from a Buffalo team in, 12, 13 years, which is crazy to say, but they're exactly the Buffalo team that we want them to be. It's awesome. I love seeing that. So I'm pretty hyped on Buffalo right now. Chicago played Philadelphia. Philadelphia won 4-0. Elliott was great with a shutout. Did you know that was the Flyers' 15th consecutive win over Chicago at home?
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
They said that at the end of the game, and I was like, what? That's kind of weird because they played each other in the playoffs. And in like 2010, and I'm like, oh wait, that was 8 years ago. More than 15 home games away. Like that seems like yesterday to me. But
yeah. Well, they play
twice a year.
Twice a year, so only one home game a year for each one.
Oh, so I guess it would have gone back to 2010.
Maybe. Like the schedule's changed a few times. There's a few occasions. I guess no. It'd always be an east-west situation there. So only one game in each town. Yeah. Yeah.
Nashville played Dallas. I'm not sure if you watched any of that game, but it was a pretty cool game because it was Spezza's 1,000th game. They gave him a stick and a Rolex and something else. Gave him a bunch of stuff.
Wow.
A bunch of valuable stuff.
Cool.
Nashville won 5-4, and Dallas was leading that game with less than 60 seconds to go in the third period and blew it. Unfortunate, very unfortunate. Toronto played Boston. Boston won 5-1. Pasternak with a hat trick, and Halak was great, ending Toronto's winning streak on the road so far this season. They were undefeated on the road until that game.
Wow.
So, could blame it a little bit on Toronto goaltending if you'd like. They had Sparks in net instead of Anderson. Not sure if that played a factor. I don't think it really did. Sparks made some pretty good saves, but I think Boston just played a really good game.
I think so.
Toronto was all over them at the beginning of the game, but
they outshot Boston 20-6 or something in the first period. They were swarming them.
It's crazy.
But Boston held on and did very well, and then of course took the game over after that. So.
Yep. The next game I know you're going to want to talk about because it's the Montreal Vegas Golden Knights game. Montreal
did
won
they play last night?
5-4. Both teams incredibly inconsistent throughout the game. Vegas dominated the first period. Montreal dominated the second period, and Vegas pretty much dominated the third. I don't know how Montreal won. If it wasn't for Niemi, Vegas would have won that game 100%.
Yeah.
It was a pretty special game because it was Pacioretty's return, and so they did a little bit of a tribute for him.
They did.
Pacioretty had more shots than in the first period than the entire Montreal Canadiens team.
Montreal in the first period had 4 shots on goal.
It's terrible.
And Pacioretty had like 7 himself
Yeah.
or something like that. It was crazy. It was crazy. Niemi was
He made some great saves.
was outstanding.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very nail biter of a game. Montreal would not have won this game last year.
Oh, absolutely not.
Not a chance. And I don't think they would have won the game this year with Carey Price in that. And I hate saying that, but I think it's true.
We'll talk a little bit about Carey Price later. I've got some stats for you.
All right.
If you want to break that
But
down.
Niemi played very, very well. He was exceptional.
He made some great saves. Some good positional saves.
Mm-hmm.
He's not necessarily known as the best positional goalie, but he was pretty stellar last night.
Yeah.
Even though he led in 4 goals, which doesn't really look that good, but he did make some big saves.
And there were defensive breakdowns.
Big time.
Big time. Petrie and
Jordy Ben.
And Jordy Ben. They
Lots
had some
of puck watching.
Yeah, a lot of puck watching, a lot of giveaways. Las Vegas did to Montreal what Montreal so far this season has been able to do to most of the other teams they've played, where they dominate the neutral zone.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they turn the puck back in the other team's zone very quickly. Montreal was the victim of that kind of play last night. They found a way to still win somehow, but it was quite a lesson. Vegas had scouted Montreal. You could tell that Claude Julien watched a lot of video before that game happened because he knew how to play Montreal, and they almost won.
100% Vegas scouted Montreal for that game.
Oh, yeah.
They dominated the neutral zone in that game. Yeah. Ottawa played Tampa Bay. Ottawa won 6-4. Tampa Bay was up 4-2 in this game at one point.
What's with that?
And Ottawa came back, showing some resiliency and some chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
There were some very crisp, confident passes in that game that led to goals. So that's pretty awesome to see from Ottawa. Florida played the Islanders. Florida won 4-2. Barzal with a very impressive breakaway goal. I'm not sure if you saw that or not.
I don't think I did, no.
Nelson also got a very nice goal on the opposite end. You should watch the highlights if you can, if you haven't seen any from that game.
Right.
Pittsburgh played Arizona. Pittsburgh won 4-0. Did you see the Crosby backhand goal?
Did I ever?
Oh my God.
He is something else.
He does
really
it
is.
He does that same goal. He takes that same backhand shot like once every 10 games, and it always works.
It always works. And there's no room. There's no way that puck goes in the net.
No,
there's
what
no
I
way.
get.
But then the puck goes in the net. It's like I don't understand. It's like there's a hole in the side of it, just the other side of the post or something.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievable. That was an impressive game, bounce back game for Pittsburgh because they had been on a 5-game losing streak.
Yes.
Now, the place I suppose you're going to expect to break your losing streak maybe is in a place like Phoenix or Glendale to play the Arizona Coyotes. But some teams would expect that they're going to dominate a game like that and then ended up losing. So Pittsburgh clearly had their mind made up. They were going to turn the corner here, and they did.
And it was close at the beginning of that game. I think it was still 0-0 after one.
Yeah, scoreless in the first period. Pittsburgh opened up in the second, got 3 goals.
Yeah. Casey DeSmith was awesome as well. He had 39 saves.
Yeah.
39 save shutout. He's having an awesome season. We'll talk a little bit about his numbers later.
Mm-hmm.
The next game was the Detroit-Carolina game. Detroit won 4-3. Darling with probably... first I'll ask you, did you see the saves he made?
No.
Darling made saves of the year back-to-back within 4 seconds of each other.
Wow.
I wish you had saw it before we talked about it, or before I talked about it. It's incredible. I'll show you whenever this podcast is over. It was amazing. The Rangers played the Blue Jackets. The Rangers won 5-4. Did you see that Korpisalo broke his stick after the shootout loss?
No.
They lost, and he just turned around and just destroyed his stick on the crossbar. I think Robin Leonard did that a couple of times one season. It reminded me of that, but good. I always like to see that. I like to see some emotion like that.
Columbus had, the Rangers had hardly any shots in that game because Korpisalo made 15 saves.
Jeez.
And he would have had, 20 shots? Well, 19 probably, not counting the shootouts. So, yeah, that's bad.
The last game, the Calgary versus Los Angeles game, Calgary won 1-0, and again, David Riddick continues to play amazing.
I watched that game.
I didn't watch a single second because I was in La La Land, so tell me about it.
It was outstanding. Hamonic scored, I think, 2.5 minutes into the game to start it off, and it was 1-0 Calgary, and that's how the game ended. The rest of it was end-to-end. There was great saves, great plays. It was really, really something. It was very feisty because when Calgary and LA have been playing lately, there's been some feistiness.
Oh, yes.
Muzzin and forget who else for LA took some liberties. There's you get the same crap that happens. So you get a legal check, and then after the legal check, the person who delivered that totally legal check gets attacked by a goon from the other team. And that's got to stop. The referees let that go basically all game long. Near the end, maybe 7 or 8 minutes left in the third, after one of these snow jobs, I think one of the Calgary players snowed the goalie for LA, snowed Campbell, and there was some pushing and shoving afterwards. And the referee finally, he had warned them, but he took one guy. He took the LA guy who reacted.
They need to start doing that more often.
They need to, and they need to do it earlier in the game because that had the prospect of getting really ugly. There was lots of, at no point did the gloves come off, but there was lots of like stinky fingers in the face and
stinky fingers,
face washes and all that. Because I imagine of all the pieces of hockey equipment, the glove is up there amongst the worst smelling stuff, right?
If we could get some hashtag stinky fingers in the comments, I'd appreciate that.
But it was a little out of hand. Now the players themselves probably would like to police that, but the referees needed to step up there. But
did you see what Lucic did?
I did, just a real quick clip of it. That was brutal.
I thought that was really strange.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe I don't know. Like, obviously he wanted to get some payback and stuff for what was it? I think it was Joseph, what he did to one of his players. But you can't headhunt around like that and completely ignore the play whatsoever to a player who genuinely is trying to follow the play and like isn't like, you can't do that.
No.
Like, I think that's, to be honest, I think it's suspension worthy.
I agree.
Because that's not part of the game.
I agree. Like that goes right up there with attempt to injure. You're hunting someone down. You're ranging around in the ice, finding your opportunity to hurt someone as much as possible.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened.
The proper way to do that is to still follow him, shadow him. There's nothing wrong with shadowing a player.
Oh, no.
Wait until he gets the puck and then deliver a massive clean hit.
Yeah, that's what you do.
That's the perfect payback. Yeah. Don't put your team at a disadvantage by taking a penalty and potentially a suspension by going around and that's just silly in my opinion.
I feel bad because I generally like Lucic. Like, he's not a Marchand type of like wacky guy who goes off as much. But this was a bad example of Marchandism.
He cares a lot about his team.
He really, really does. And I like that quality. I would love to have him on my team still, even with this. But he's really got to control himself.
He takes a lot of responsibility of that role, especially on Edmonton with McDavid and stuff. He has to play that type of role. He just went a little bit too far this time. Yeah. As far as today's games go, and today as in Sunday, Minnesota plays St. Louis. To me, this is the game to watch. It's a division matchup. Both of these teams are in competitive situations this year, and specifically right now during this time of year. It's going to be an awesome game. I can't wait to watch it. It's probably going on. It's going on right now.
It's underway as we're talking. So, they're in the second period.
As soon as we're done this, I want to go rewind that and watch it.
Blues 1-0 in the second right now.
Don't spoil it. Why would you spoil it?
I'll give you an update later before we're done.
No, I don't want an update. Why would you do that? I can't believe you just did that.
I thought you're not going to tune it in live? You're going to start at the beginning?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Ottawa plays Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona plays Washington. New Jersey plays Winnipeg. The Golden Knights play Boston, which should be a pretty good game, actually.
Yeah, it should be. And, of course, Las Vegas might be a little tired after last night's game in Montreal.
Yep.
So Boston might have easy pickings here.
I agree.
If they're careful. Because Boston, they played last night too, but I think they had an easier ride of Toronto. So
Calgary plays San Jose. That's going to be a really, really good game. And Colorado plays Edmonton. So those are all the games for today. Now, I want to give some shout-outs. Not really a segment I've done before, but I think it's worthy because there's some stuff going on this week that you don't know about that I want to let you know about and let other people know about. Well, you might know about one of them, but
All right.
the first shout out I want to do is for Ryan. Ryan's been supporting us on Patreon for quite a while. We've done a personal video for Ryan on Patreon, and he just had major ear surgery.
Oh.
And he's recovering. So I just wanted, Ryan, if you're listening, shout out to you, buddy. Hope you recover well. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're getting lots of rest, and I hope it was successful and everything works out for you.
Cool.
So just get lots of rest and stick in there.
Go Ryan.
The next round of shout-outs I want to give are to T-Park, Mika, and Joey, who are meeting up in Texas, in Dallas, at literally as we're speaking.
No kidding.
T-Park is picking up, I think, Mika first, and they're going to wait around for Joey, or the other way around, or whatever. And
So where are they all from? T-Park's from there. Mika sounds Finnish.
he's from Finland.
Okay.
And Joey lives in Maine.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so they're meeting up there, and they're going to spend the entire week together, and they're going to see a game, Dallas versus Boston, on, I think it's Friday, this coming Friday.
And that's Joey's team, isn't it?
That's Joey's team. He's going to wear a Boston jersey to the game. So
That's great.
if you plan on watching a game on Friday, try and make it the Dallas-Boston game, and then you'll know there's some fellow Post2Post subscribers in that game.
And if you see a guy in the stands with a Boston jersey,
Yeah,
that could be.
that could be. Yeah. If you T-Park and you boys, if you end up listening to this podcast or watching it before you go, try and get on camera. Try and do something crazy and get on camera.
And definitely do an intro.
And definitely do an intro.
Yeah.
If there's no intro, you're dead to me. We have another Post2Post subscriber and Patreon member traveling as well, Brittany, who you're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
She's traveling to San Jose next Saturday for a game.
Oh, wow.
Going behind enemy lines and seeing her St. Louis Blues take on the San Jose Sharks. So that should be pretty
Wow.
good. I've told Brittany 1,000 times to do an intro for me, and she never does. She's a little shy, I think. So I'm going to say it again. Brittany, if you're listening or watching, we need an intro from you. Make it happen, especially in San Jose, because you know it's my second favorite team. And speaking of intro videos, I just want to give a big thank you to everyone who's been sending in intro videos. I don't have time to reply to all the emails and stuff, but I've read them all. I downloaded your video. They're just sitting there and waiting to go into regular Post2Post videos. So
Cool.
I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone who's sent in an intro video. If you're new and you don't know what that is, you just film yourself. Say you go to, you go to a Calgary-Edmonton game, and you're outside of the arena, and you say, hey, it's Neil, I'm here at Rogers Place, or whatever it's called. And is it Rogers Place? Or is it Rogers Center? I get them all mixed up. Yeah, Rogers Place is.
Put me on the spot.
Yeah, anyway. It's Neil here. I'm here to see a game, Calgary versus Edmonton. And, it's my first ever Calgary-Edmonton game, and you're watching Post2Post. Just something like that, like whatever. And I'll use that in the video for the channel. So there's been, I think, 8 or 9 in the past couple of weeks. So you guys have really been doing some good work for us there, and it's a fun thing to do, to give back to you guys a little bit, to show off your jerseys and your support of your team if you're there at the arena. I think it's pretty cool for us to see that in other viewers as well. So we really enjoy doing that. So you can email any of those if you'd like to make any to post2postshow@gmail.com. The link and details are in the description. And you remember Steve-O?
Sure do.
I know you know who Steve-O is.
Sure
Everyone
do.
who watches Post2Post know who Steve-O is. He continues to travel around North America to games. He just sent me an intro from, I think it was the New Jersey-Winnipeg game that's going on today. He sent me an intro video already from that. I think I have like 11 unused Steve-O videos that I still have not used. And I think he's probably already been in like 15.
Oh, yeah. He's ubiquitous.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's all I got for shoutouts right now.
That's great.
And the next segment, if you want to call it that, I'd like to do is the viewer questions. Now, we did this 2 podcasts ago, and I forgot to do it the last podcast. I was over in Fredericton filming with Jason, and we had a lot of other stuff we wanted to talk about, so I half forgot about it, half left it off on purpose a little bit. So
Before we go any further,
yeah,
I've got to say that you and Jason did a great job last week.
thank you. I appreciate that.
And you guys have such great chemistry. And I know we've talked about this off camera, but we have fiber op here, he has fiber op there. We have the best possible internet linkage that we could develop between his house and the broadcast center here in our house. is there any way you guys can collab on a podcast like you and I do, but you and him instead, because he's way better than I am?
No, he's not.
Yes, he is. Like, he knows so much about the business of hockey, and I find that fascinating. I would be your biggest fan if you and Jason did podcasts.
It's not like he's better than you or you're better than him. It's just different dynamic. That's all.
Well, yeah, but he's far more interesting than I am. I'll put it that way.
You guys are both equally as interesting. You're both goats. He just doesn't have the title as goat. We'll try and make it work, but the delay is the biggest issue. But
there's got to be a way to overcome that.
We could probably do it without a delay if we didn't have video. If we just had audio, we'll just Photoshop a picture of his face in between us, maybe, or something like that. You can join.
That might work fine. That'd be great. It would be great to have him included.
I agree.
At least as a third man, and maybe even the main second man. And I could be the third man.
You could be the third man?
I could be the third man. Third man in. Anyway.
There should be a segment called Third Man In.
That'd be great.
Anyways, yeah, so we got some viewer questions. One of the questions was supposed to be for the last week's podcast. That's going to be the third video that we watched. That's from Mika. So he hit the context in his video doesn't really make sense because it's in this podcast instead of the last. You'll understand when you see it. But anyways, there's 4 viewer questions. If you'd like to send in your own viewer question, all you need to do is film yourself and email it to post2postshow@gmail.com.
That's just me setting up the sound.
Yeah, and you can also if you upload it to Dropbox and send me the link, that's definitely the best way to do it, because some people have sent me questions that have been on Google Drive and I don't have access, and so just Dropbox me the link. Anyway, our first question comes from Gage, so if you want to cue that up, that would be awesome.
Okay, here we go.
Hey guys, it's Gage from Dallas. Go Stars. I actually got a pretty in-depth question for you today. I was wondering on you guys' thoughts about why Western Conference teams seem to be struggling a little bit in the Eastern Conference. I'm filming this on Sunday night as Dallas have just lost to Detroit 4-2. They also lost to Ottawa a while back. They lost to Toronto. I'm curious as to whether you guys think it's due to the style of play, so like the East is more of a skill game versus the physical play we see in the West, or does it have some other X factor? Is it a problem that only Dallas seems to be facing? So yeah, I'm just curious on you guys' thoughts on that. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you so much for that question, Gage. Very well put, and an interesting topic, because I think we probably discussed something similar to this in the past. I remember having a discussion about mostly around geography, or how the teams were geographically laid out. All the East teams are so aligned in basically 2 time zones, or 1 time zone, or whatever, and then the West is so spread out as far as distance and stuff. Their travel times are so much, so when they have to travel, and for any game, it's more than the average travel time for an East team. So when a West team has to come all the way to the East, I think they're suffering a little bit more from that jet lag versus an East team out to go West. If that makes any sense, it probably doesn't, but that's how I view it a little bit. I don't think Dallas is the only one struggling. I think Vegas has struggled a little bit. There's been some other teams as well. I don't know if it happens year to year. I remember East teams really struggling against West teams. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm not sure if my logic of travel times really makes sense for that. It's maybe just a fluke kind of thing, or it seems like a trend, but it's just the way it goes sometimes. But I'm not sure. What's your opinion?
Well, I think Gage is onto it. I think he's onto it in his question. And I guess you could say it's size versus skill, but I think there's a lot of skill in the West, so I don't want to totally adopt that the East has better skill. That's why they're doing better. I don't think it's just Dallas, for one thing. I think it's a lot of the teams. We've had such a small sample size so far this year, it'll take at least another probably 20 or 30 games before we have a good statistical basis for making any assumption. But the Eastern teams are doing better against the West than I thought they would so far. Now, that bodes well for our team. Montreal is doing a Western Swing road trip coming up this coming week, and we'll see how Montreal does out West when they play Calgary, Edmonton, and so on. But the speed that hockey is becoming, smaller players, faster players, we're seeing it with Montreal now. But with Vegas, they're playing that style of hockey. Really, they're big guys there as well, but they're playing more of a speed game.
Yeah,
and they thrived in the West last year, and they're doing well, relatively well so far this year. Not the great start they had last year, but they're still definitely a team to worry about and be reckoned with. It might just be a wave of change in the NHL that's starting in the East and moving to the West.
I think you're right.
Starting with Vegas.
I think that's exactly it. Yeah.
And some of the players we see, for instance, players that play in the East and then go to the West. Your Pacioretty's, your Dion Phaneufs, people like that go to the West. They don't do as well when they get there.
Kyle Turris.
And they're still every bit the good player that they were when they were in the East, but they're playing more games against a different style of hockey.
Yep.
That's bigger, and so it can't be the individual players. So it's really hard to point to what one thing it is, but I think it's in the basis of Gage's question. I think it's a bigger, more physical game in the West that has dominated the NHL for a long time, all other things being equal, notwithstanding the fact that Pittsburgh, a team from the East, wins Stanley Cups fairly regularly. And, of course, they do that with big bodies, though. They've got Malkin and they got Crosby and they got some, big dudes on Pittsburgh, so they might be more of a compatible team to play against Western teams. But I do think that smaller, faster teams, the Buffaloes, the Montreals, Carolina, Florida to some extent.
Yeah, Toronto
especially, very offensive-minded, a little less on defense. The West has such great defensive pairings. Nashville, L.A., Anaheim, they've got great back ends. San Jose, great back ends, way better than most of what you'd see in the East. But in the East, you've got these massive offensive lines. You've got Boston's Bergeron line. You've got Toronto.
Yeah.
They're just fantastic. Even the Islanders, they have Anders Lee and people like that. They're just lights out. And the West has more of a defensive. East has more of an offensive. And right now, it looks like the East is, all the teams in the East have higher on average point totals, win percentage, and all of that. But they're playing easier teams to play against, too.
Yeah, that's true.
It's really, really hard. I almost wish, this switches to baseball here really quickly, but back when I started becoming a baseball fan in the late 60s, when Montreal joined the team as an expansion franchise or joined the league as an expansion franchise in 1969, the only time the National and American Leagues played each other was in the All-Star Game and the World Series. There was no interleague games at all. Never. And that came up in the last 15 or 20 years. They started playing games where there was all these rivalries they're trying to take advantage of. The Mets never played the Yankees, but now they do.
Yeah.
And the Red Sox never played the Mets, but they could now because of the ability to cross over. The Blue Jays and the Expos would never play each other, for instance, because they were in different leagues. But they could now if they both still existed. Montreal doesn't anymore. But I think in a way that takes a bit away from the game. When I would be okay if we did what the NFL does, if we had conferences that spanned the entire continent, but the teams didn't necessarily play each other. Like you had the NFC and the AFC, for instance.
So you never want to see Montreal play L.A.?
Well, not necessarily that. Maybe Montreal and L.A. would be in the same conference. So Montreal would play L.A. 4 times a year, but they'd never play San Jose.
So
have more games between, half the teams, instead of dividing them down the Mississippi River, you would divide them into 2 conferences that would actually both span the continent.
Kind of like how the Blue Jays share the same division or whatever with the Texas Rangers.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're not even close to each other.
They're not even close to each other. Yet on the other hand, the New York Mets don't play the Blue Jays unless it's one of those weirdo interleague games.
Exactly, yeah.
So I think that that doesn't solve anything, and that doesn't really respond to Gage's question. But I think we don't have a really good measure of who can beat who. We see this every night where Ottawa will beat Montreal, and then Montreal will thump Detroit, and then Detroit will thump Ottawa.
Oh yeah,
that doesn't make any sense. It shouldn't happen. Everything else being equal, the teams that get beat by teams should not be able to beat the teams that beat those teams.
Yeah, well, I mean, Buffalo beat Ottawa 9-2, and I think a couple days later, Ottawa beat Tampa Bay, which is one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah,
that just doesn't make sense. And it happens all the time.
It does.
It's strange.
Yeah, I just tried to do a quick research of stats of teams versus the other conference, and I can't find anything right now that jumps out at me to see if we have a statistical number I could call on to help respond better to Gage's question, but I don't see it right now. That there are stats out there that Montreal or Toronto versus Western teams versus Eastern teams. I don't know if there's an overall stat of Eastern Conference teams versus Western Conference teams.
I'm sure there is somewhere. But
there is. It's just hard for me to find it on no notice.
It was a good question.
It's a great question.
Good question, Gage.
And it's a question that will continue to be valid probably until February.
Yeah.
Until we figure out
agree.
if there's a real answer to that.
Yeah. Our next question comes from Liam, so let's take a look at that.
Okay, here we go, Liam.
Hey guys, happy Halloween. My name is Liam O'Brien. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. And my question is if you guys can do videos on the best hockey brawls of all time, maybe some of the best rivalries, stuff like that. So, yeah, if you get this and put it in the video, thank you so much. Okay, see ya. Bye.
All right, thank you so much, Liam, for your question. We have done a video on rivalries before. I think probably about a year and 7 months ago, I think we did. I don't think you were a part of that video, but on the channel there's a video about rivalries. As far as hockey brawls, was that the first part of the question?
Yes.
That's very difficult for us to, I mean, we can talk about it a little bit, and there's one that comes to my mind when Mike Milbury hits a fan in the head with his shoe. But other than that, we can't show any footage, so that's the hard part, right? So
that's the talking about a hockey brawl without being able to show the brawl.
Yeah.
It just loses so much impact.
Yeah, for copyright issues, if you don't know, we can't show footage.
That's why.
So
yeah, the
that's
NHL
the main reason,
broadcasting rights, they own the brawl, so we can't. Notwithstanding the fact that yes, there's hundreds of other YouTubers out there. You can go on and YouTube search hockey brawls and find all kinds of them, and whatever they're doing to they've probably got copyright strikes on them. They're certainly not monetizing it or anything like that.
Yeah.
So they must not care about that, but we have to care.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's the only reason. I've seen some of my favorites were the Colorado Detroit, goalie on goalie and all that kind of stuff. They were great brawls. But if you go back far enough, back when I was a kid, John Ferguson versus Eddie Shack, Montreal, Toronto, and the blood's just flying everywhere. Just love that stuff, right?
There was brawls so big that they had to shut the lights off. I can't remember what game that was, but I remember seeing footage of that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, next question comes from Mika.
Mika, here we go, Mika.
Hello, Post2Post, and happy November. I know this week's podcast is from an undisclosed secret location, Batcave or perhaps the Pentagon, but still I decided to ask you guys' opinion on the newest Montreal Canadiens players on this new and young season so far, and especially Joel Armia. How well has he played on your opinion, and is his role the right role for the team? Thanks and keep it up.
All right, thanks, Mika, for that question. I really appreciate that. You're hitting home with our favorite team here, so an easy topic for us to talk about. And you specifically mentioned Joel Armia. And it's
well done, nicely done.
Because of you, we have a little tradition where every time he touches the puck and the announcer says Armia.
He calls him Armia. Neil and I both go Armia.
So anyways, yeah, I really think he's fitting in so well with the Canadiens. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
Totally agree. He's injured right now.
He is, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, and this just happened probably after Mika filmed his question. Can't wait to have him back. He's incredible.
Yeah, I got to see him play live last year as a Jet against the Golden Knights, and he was probably my favorite player on the ice for the Jets. And when I heard that he was traded to Montreal, I was so happy. So yeah, I'm really, really pleased that he's really melding and gelling with the Canadiens lineup. Some of the other players, he mentioned like some of the new players. He only mentioned Armia, but
Armia.
Some of the other new players are Max Domi. Max Domi is having an incredible year. He's got 9 goals and 12 assists, I think. He's in the top 10 in points in the league, which is ridiculous. I think maybe he's the 11th or something like that, but he's close to in the top 10. Tomas Tatar has fit in so well in Montreal. I love watching him play. I don't know how you feel about him, but
Tatar is amazing.
He is.
He's just amazing. And he got the winning goal last night against Vegas, which was his former team. They said they didn't play him much in the playoffs. He only played maybe 3 or 4 games in the whole playoffs. And then they let him go to Montreal for Pacioretty. And everybody at the time would have thought, well, Montreal's just getting sloppy seconds here. He's turned out to be, by far, a more valuable contributor than Pacioretty has been in Vegas.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's so happy every time he's on the ice and something good happens or on the bench or whatever. I think he's really enjoying his time just as a person in Montreal, so that's pretty cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
The other player is Kotkaniemi. I can never say that name.
Jesperi Kotkaniemi.
I'm going to say Kanemi.
No.
I can't say it.
You can say Antti-Niemi. You can say Niemi.
Yeah.
You can say Kotka.
Kotkaniemi.
Perfect.
Yeah, but
you just got it.
But then it goes away.
But it doesn't have to. It can stay there.
It's the new Mika Zibanejad. I couldn't never say that name before. Now this year it's Jesperi Kotkaniemi.
You just did it right.
Yeah, but then it'll go away. I'm in the zone right now, but it'll go away.
He is fabulous.
He's great.
He is an artist. He's got the same kind of finesse that Kovalev had.
That's a good comparison.
And he's not a body size and all that. He's a bandy-legged, skinny guy, and he's really tall, and he's not even grown into his body yet. He's only 18.
Yeah.
But he has like the behind-the-back stuff and the creative. Domi's a bit like this too. And Domi's a little shorter and squatter, so he can pull it off a little better. He's more compact. But Kotkaniemi can do things, passing the puck off the boards and going around people and getting the puck back and just making very smart plays and anticipating which way someone's going to go, and he'll go the other way. He's fabulous. I'm so excited.
He's fast too. Yeah. I love watching him play.
And we have now, and I don't know if Mika sees these things, but on the night that they all did so well, we had Kotkaniemi, we had Armia, and we had Lehkonen, all playing very, very well in a given game.
Yeah.
And they were coming up in the after game show on TSN 690, the sports channel. What do you want to name this line? And of course, the obvious name is the finish line, right? But there were some other very creative names because they were playing so well together. And they speak in Finnish on the ice.
Good.
So the other players, even their own players, but if they're all 3 forwards and they're deciding what they're going to do just before a face-off, no one else has a clue what they're going to do.
Unless someone on the other team speaks Finnish.
Exactly, and there's not too many of those. So it's awesome. It's just awesome.
What were some of the other names?
What?
You mentioned you said there was a couple other names for the line.
The one I liked the best was it Fin de Monde, which is the end of the world for other teams, right? Fin de Monde, which would be French. There were a few. I can't bring them up to mind right now, but
Cool.
They were just viewers or listeners calling in with these names, and they played some of them on the air the next morning after the game. It was really good. Yeah, but I'm very, very impressed with Kotkaniemi, especially Armia as well. He's got he's just his plus minus is at a 0. He's not a liability at all to the team, and if you can be a 0 or a positive, that's all that we want, especially this time of year. He's got 4 goals, I think, or 3 goals and 4 assists. So he's producing a point every second game, roughly, and he's been out now for a couple. But he's very, very badly missed, and hopefully he's back real soon.
Yeah, Armia is a very good positional player. I think is probably a good way
very
to put
responsible.
it. Yeah, responsible.
Yeah. And we have the other guy's David Schlemko, who just came back. Yesterday was his first game back with Montreal.
Yeah.
He was injured in the preseason, so hasn't really played much yet. And he had several games of conditioning down with the Laval Rocket and thrived down there until it was time to bring him up. So they brought him up, and he contributed last night quite nicely. He's quite responsible, too, for a young player.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Nick, and it's about the Chicago Blackhawks.
All righty, here we go, Nick.
Hey, Neil and Brett. My name is Nick. I did ask a question in your previous podcast where you were taking video questions. And yes, I do collect hockey jerseys, mainly Blackhawk jerseys, as you can see there. That's about 40 Hawks jerseys all there. My question is about Coach Q's recent firing. What was your thoughts once the firing went down? Because Blackhawk fans, including me, are all in the agreement that the wrong man was fired. It should have been Stan Bowman. Because Coach Q was not the one who brought in the players. It was Stan Bowman, and Bowman's made this roster to fail for Coach Q. And we all agree that Coach Q should have been have had the better job security instead of Bowman. So, what's your thoughts on this recent change of head coaches to a 33-year-old head coach that is younger than 4 players on the Blackhawks roster today? So, thank you for taking my question. But most of all, for my behalf, let's go Hawks.
All right, thank you so much, Nick, for your question once again, and I enjoyed seeing those jerseys behind you. So good on you for collecting those jerseys. I'm going to pass this over to you right away and get your opinion, because this is something that we haven't discussed.
Yeah, it isn't, and it just happened a couple of days ago. It's a very timely question, so we're very much on the cutting edge of breaking news here. I was shocked when I heard that. I thought it was so early in the season. Chicago is in last place where they are, but they're at 15 points out of 17 games. They're almost at 500 hockey. They've not been that bad, I didn't think. They've won some games, and I think they've still got a lot to show. In fact, they got off to a pretty good start, if I'm not mistaken. Didn't they win?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad of a start. Yeah.
Pardon me. So I'm shocked that anybody got fired at this stage of the season. Quenneville is a really highly regarded coach, and they were talking about his firing in the Hockey Night in Canada last night, and they said this is clearly just a break for him. He'll be back in the seat of another team very soon, but he won't be cheap.
Oh no, he'll probably be the highest paid coach out there.
They were thinking that for another team to pick him up and then maybe sign him to another 4 years, it would cost between $15 and $20 million to have him as a head coach. And that's intense money. That's a lot of money. Age, like the replacement, 33-year-old replacement, and I didn't catch the name, and I don't think I know the name, but age does count for a lot, but don't tell that to Kyle Dubas in Toronto.
And don't tell it to what's-his-face in Arizona.
Yeah.
Their GM.
Yeah,
I think he's like 28 or something like that, or 29.
Yeah.
I can never remember his name.
Yeah. So I would feel comfortable being a Chicago Blackhawks fan and being a buddy of Nick and all of the people that he talks to, because I don't think Quenneville should have been fired. I'm not sure Bowman should have been fired either, though, at this point. I think it's early days. But clearly, Chicago's best days with this roster are behind them, for sure. And I don't know if that's just a cyclic thing that happens to all teams, or whether you can point a finger at someone and say you screwed up. I don't know.
Well, I completely disagree with you and Nick.
Okay.
No offense, Nick.
Wow.
Over a year ago, I think maybe about a year and 6 months ago, I created a video on the channel about the Chicago Blackhawks after they got swept by Nashville. And in that video, I was calling for Quenneville to be fired. Not because I don't like Quenneville, not because I don't think he's a good coach, but he's been coaching the team for so long. Sometimes it's just time for a coach to move on, just so you can get a new face in there, just so you can get a new structure in there, just so the players have an opportunity to feel like they're a part of a new team again, even if they have the same line mates and stuff. Sometimes a coach can completely revitalize a team. And I saw that in Chicago a year and a half ago. I wanted it to happen then. I'm disappointed that it's taken them this long to do it. And hopefully, for their sake, it works out. So I did not want to see Stan Bowman get fired either, because he built that team from scratch to be a Stanley Cup team. Like, he can do it again. And I'm just not in the agreement that it was the incorrect decision to get rid of Quenneville. I think it was the correct decision. And it has nothing to do with Quenneville being a bad coach or anything like that. He'll land somewhere else. He'll do great. It's completely due to the fact that I just want to see a new structure and a new face. That's it.
Okay, I've done a little research while you've been ranting over there. Colleton is the new coach. So that's their 33-year-old coach. But I was right in my presumption. Chicago actually got off to a 6-4 start at the beginning of the season. They've since lost 7 games in a row, not counting the one they're going to play tonight against Carolina, in Carolina. So, yeah, 7 games in a row. Maybe something does have to happen. Now I don't know. That same team went 6-4 for the first 10 games of the year.
They did.
So it's maybe not the talent on the team. It's maybe not Bowman's fault. Maybe it is Quenneville's fault.
That's what I'm saying. Like, sometimes you just need a new face, and that's all it comes down to. It's not insulting, or it's not like a negative thing. It's just sometimes you just need a new face.
Well, and we've seen that in other places where, remember the time that New York and Vancouver basically traded coaches?
Yeah. Yeah, it happens. It really does. It just happens.
Yeah, Torts and Vigneault just swapped offices, and it kept on going.
Yeah.
Every team goes through this. Teams that are good, they'll often change a coach when they think it's time to do that, and it's always a good coach that finds another place. Look at Michel Therrien. He was let go from Pittsburgh. I think later that same year they won the cup with the same talent, just with a different coach.
Yeah,
right? Bilesman came in.
Yeah, I think Bilesman did come in and won. Yeah, you're right.
And then Therrien coached in Montreal for a while, and he wasn't lights out or anything, but that was his second stint in Montreal. Now he's been replaced with Julien, who got fired by Boston. Obviously, these people are okay; they're able to coach hockey. But yeah, you're right. There's coaching changes that happen because of chemistry.
And you made a good point there, because Boston's a perfect example of this, because they were struggling under Julien that season 2 years ago, and they brought in Bruce Cassidy, and Boston since that time has been potentially the best team in the league, or one of the best teams in the league since that moment. They played such great hockey. So
yeah, they have.
I think it comes down to a new face.
Sometimes the players just give up on a coach.
Yep.
And I can't imagine that should ever happen, but
it does.
I guess it does.
In every sport. So it's not just hockey. It happens. So good question, Nick. I hope you're not offended that I disagree with you, but I think I did it respectfully, hopefully.
I hope so. I like Stan Bowman because he's Scotty Bowman's son, and I really like Scotty Bowman. He coached tremendous teams in the 70s in Montreal, and I've got a high regard for Scotty Bowman, and I was hoping Stan would do well.
I like Brad Treliving because he's Jim Treliving's son. I really like Jim Treliving.
Yeah, I do too. He's a nice man.
He's funny too.
Yeah, I've met him, of course, as
yes,
you know.
I know. You've told me the story 17 times.
18.
In an airport, or you were behind
Toronto.
the line.
It was the Pearson Airport. We were side by side. Had a great conversation.
Yes, I'm sure you did.
And I'm sure he's not telling anyone that he met the GOAT.
Probably not. The last thing on my list is I just want to talk a little bit about goalies, because there's been some, like, if you look at the top 10 in save percentage, who do you think, like, what kind of names would you expect to be in the top 10 in save percentage on a year-to-year basis?
On a year-to-year basis?
Yeah, like,
oh yeah, you're
like Lundqvist. Oh yeah, Lundqvist probably up there. Carey Price maybe.
Yeah, maybe Carey Price.
Like Jonathan Quick.
Yeah.
All the big dogs.
The big dogs.
Okay, so here's the top 10. Pekka Rinne is number one.
Okay.
949.
Pekka Rinne?
Pekka Rinne.
Yeah.
Totally expect him to be there, so that's fine. He's played 8 games. Casey DeSmith, .942 save percentage. He's played 9 games with Pittsburgh. That's a name you don't expect to see up there.
No.
Number 3, Halak, .941, 10 games played.
I was going to guess that. I was, because he has been playing very well.
He has been, but that's not a name. On a year-to-year basis, you don't expect him to be there.
No.
Grice, .940, 9 games played. That's not a name I'd expect to see there on a year-to-year basis. Riddick, like I said earlier, have an amazing season, .935.
Incredible. Yeah.
Frederik Andersen, that's probably a goalie I'd expect to see there. He plays very well for Toronto, .933. He's played 14 games.
I'm surprised he's that high, though, because Toronto has such a weak back end that he'd have a lot of goals going by him that aren't his fault.
They give up a lot of shots, though.
I guess that's the case. Yeah, that you can get a high save percentage and still lose some games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Devin Dubnyk is on the list, .932, 12 games played.
All right.
That's a name that I'd expect to see here sometimes, and then 2 weeks or 2 months later I wouldn't, and then 2 weeks after that I would, because he's so inconsistent. So Antti Raanta is an 8th, .929 with 5 games played. Gibson, 9.928 with 5 games played. Vasilevsky, .927, 9 games played. So Raanta, maybe I'd expect to see on here. Gibson, I probably would. Vasilevsky, I probably would. But no Lundqvist, no Quick, no Price.
No Ben Bishop.
No
No Luongo.
No Luongo. No Matt Murray. No Crawford. No,
Yeah, no Darling.
No Jones. No, So if we go to goals against average, I want to talk about the worst goals against average.
Okay.
I'm not going to name them all. I'm just going to name some names.
Sure.
Second overall in the league, Jake Allen.
Oh.
9.3, or sorry, not 9.3, 3.99
Okay.
goals against
I was
average.
going to say, geez.
Cam Ward, 3.92 goals against average. Bernier, 3.92. Matt Murray, 3.87. Craig Anderson, 3.70. Mike Smith, 3.66. Braden Holtby, 3.26. Carey Price, 3.07. Crawford, 3.07. Rask, 3.05. Talbot, 2.94. Hellebuck, 2.93. Bobrovsky, 2.90. These are massive names, and they're all in the bottom 17 of goals against average.
Well, I don't feel so bad about being a Montreal fan. Because I thought Carey Price would be at the top of that list after losing 4 games in a row, I think, with 4 goals or more scored. They didn't lose them all, but he's let in a lot of goals.
His goal save
Oh, my God.
save percentage is 896, I think. Something like
He's
that.
down in the 8s now.
He's making $84 million over the next 8 years. It's the worst. It's the worst thing if he continues to play like he is.
Yeah.
Because Montreal is toast. There's no way they can, they can't trade him because no one's going to want to pay $10 million a year for a goalie that's underperforming for an average goaltender. Like, if at an average goaltender level, he's underperforming from them.
Yeah.
And you can't retain a salary because then if you're going to retain a salary, you're probably going to retain at least $3 or $4 million per year. And you're going to shoot yourself in the foot for the next 8 years if you do that, because you're still going to have to pay another goalie, which is probably going to be at like 5 or 6,
Yeah.
and then your backup goalie, which is probably going to be like 2 or 3. So you're still spending the same amount of money for maybe better goaltending. So you can't. That's just frig.
How do you really feel?
Yeah.
It is frustrating.
Anyway,
But it's all with goalies. They're kind of like baseball pitchers or catchers. They're a special breed of people, and what goes on in their heads. They were talking last night about the difference between some goalies and their pregame rituals. Some goalies, you can't even talk to them on a game night. They won't talk. They have to go in a corner somewhere and meditate or whatever they do. Other goalies, like Marc-Andre Fleury, he's loosey-goosey, playing with the guys, doing a little soccer, pranking people, bumping into them and stuff. And I wish all goalies were more like that, because
too.
you could relate to them a little bit better.
Yeah.
You get these dark, gloomy guys that you can't figure out what's going on in their head, and then they go into a funk. Carey Price is in a funk right now.
he's been in a funk for the last 2 years.
Well, really, but earlier in the season, he had a couple of games where he was tracking the puck well. He was perfect positioning. He was back. I thought he was back, and whatever they'd done, coaching, philosophy, whatever it was working. And then you see those last few games, and it's like, oh man.
Yeah, it's tough. Very tough. That's all I have to talk about.
Oh, I got some stuff.
You got some stuff?
I do.
All right, hit
What
me.
do we have for time?
58 minutes.
Surprise, surprise. Last night, I think you missed this, but it was in the second intermission when they have the 4 panelists around the table.
The hot stove.
The hot stove. Elliot Friedman was talking about a different playoff format.
Oh, is this like theoretical, or what he wants to see, or is there discussions?
Well, it's a bit theoretical, but there's discussions of some kind. But apparently the discussions are being shot down by Gary Bettman.
Of course they are.
But Elliot still thought it was important enough to mention it on the broadcast and then describe how it would work. And I hadn't heard this one before, and I loved it.
Okay.
And it looks like the following. You would still have your top 3 teams from each division finishing and playing off themselves. So you have top 6 in each side. Now you have to decide who the last 2 are, your 2 wild card spots.
Yep.
Right now, the 2 wild card spots are just the next 2 teams in the conference that have the next highest points and tiebreakers.
Yep.
What Elliot suggested, and I don't know if it came from Elliot or he's just relaying it on from someone else's brain, that the 7th and 8th place teams would actually play the 9th and 10th place teams in a best of 3 to see who becomes the wild card team.
With those, so there would be a bit of a break between the end of the season and the playoffs
For the top 6.
for the top 6
Yeah.
specifically, so we could watch the
Right.
kind of like the NFL does something like that, don't they?
Yeah, they
Wild card
baseball
games?
even does have wild card playoff, a wild card playoff just before the real playoffs. And the beauty of this system, and this is the part I hadn't heard before. I'd heard all that up to this point. The top team, the highest seeded team in those mini-series, would have home ice advantage for all 3 games if necessary.
Interesting.
So just think of the gate that they would get, right? There's great gate for that home team.
Yeah.
There'd be good TV revenue because
Yeah,
you've got extra
that's true.
playoff games that you wouldn't have normally.
Yeah.
You've got the top six. The top six are actually earning a bit of a bye as far as having some rest of a few days and getting ready for the playoffs. They might get a week off, let's say, till these other 3 games get played.
Yeah.
And then when they're playing, like when the top team in each of the divisions, Tampa Bay, let's say, and Pittsburgh or Washington, they're going to play a team that's pretty beat up and have a better chance of actually beating that team. Or the other team will be raring to go and they'll have had all kinds of practice. So it would be very interesting. Now, apparently, Bettman's not even wanting to entertain the idea of it.
Of course, he's not a puppet.
But but it's a great. I think it's a great.
I think it's a great idea too.
Of all the things I've heard, still my preference is 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7.
Yeah, me too.
And that's will always be that way. But if it can't be that, I would really like this.
I think that's good for the game as a viewer.
Yeah.
Probably not for the player, but for the viewer.
Probably not. But for the home team, like you've got your 41 games of revenue in the regular season, and the top-seeded wild card team might have another 3 nights of gate revenue there, plus TV revenue.
Yeah.
And then if you win those 3 games, or if you need all 3 to win, but even if you win the first 2, then you go on, and then you've got at least another 2 home games in the first round. So I think that's really, really good.
Gary Bettman should be interested in that because it makes him more money.
Yeah, and it's all about the dollars, right, for
Yeah.
Gary. He's done a great job at keeping the owners group happy with increasing revenues. And he's increased the number of teams. The first time he handed out a Stanley Cup was to the Montreal Canadiens in 1993. And he's grown the league from whatever it was at the time, 22 teams or something then, or 19, whatever it was. Now there's 31, soon to be 32. And they're all doing well, really. Like with the exception of maybe Arizona and Florida, they're all filling their arenas quite a bit.
I give him 0 credit.
Okay.
I think it would have happened with or without him.
I'm not so sure. I think you need a guy like him to.
What's he do?
I don't
exactly.
follow him
You
around.
can't even tell me what he does.
Well,
He doesn't
how
do
would
anything.
I know what he does?
He gives speeches.
I don't know what the president of the NHL does. I don't know what the president of the United States does.
He's a face. He gives speeches and he goes out on the ice and gets booed.
I think he does a lot. I don't think he does a lot that you don't see. And
I think
that I don't see.
I think he's just a face. I think there's people behind him making all the important decisions.
I don't know. I'm not a fan of Gary Bettman. I think he should have been turfed as commissioner or president, whatever it is, 15 or 20 years ago.
We're coming up on 3 lockouts.
I know. So I don't like the league under his tenure. I think he has hurt Canadian hockey. I think that's my biggest complaint about him. The Nordiques moving to Colorado, Winnipeg moving to Arizona. I don't like how that was even allowed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still not been fixed because they're still not playing hockey in Quebec yet. And I think that's largely on his shoulders, and it would be a long time for me to forgive on that. But anyway, I don't think that if he was as bad as you think he is, he wouldn't have a job because there's 31 owners that would get rid of him because he works for them.
He's good at his job because he makes the money. He's a scoundrel. He's a shyster.
Oh my. Oh dear. Anyway, there are things we don't know about Gary Bettman. One of them, I learned last night. He gave an interview when he and Willie O'Ree were on. You saw that.
Yeah.
He has a backyard rink at his cottage in
Vermont,
winter home in Vermont. He's not just a businessman who came from the NBA and doesn't really care about the game. I think he does care.
I think he cares about the game. I just think he's a weasel, and he cares more about money than anything else.
Yeah.
Including the game of hockey.
But you could probably say that about Erik Karlsson too.
Could you?
I don't know. Maybe you could. He went for the highest bidder, didn't he?
I mean, I guess a little bit.
Well,
but
so that can be a player. That can be a coach. That can be a team owner. That could be Harold. Well, it certainly was Harold Ballard in the 70s. All he cared about was money. He put just enough hockey on the ice to fill the Maple Leaf Gardens, even if the team wasn't good.
I think that, no offense, but I think Erik Karlsson was a bad choice there because I think a lot of that scenario happened because of Eugene Melnick and not Erik Karlsson. I think that
I think it was going to happen anyway.
I think Erik Karlsson just agreed to go there because it was a good team.
Mm-hmm. But they could say that about Kovalchuk. Definitely.
Yeah, yes, you could say it about Kovalchuk.
And Panarin, even. As much as I like Panarin, he's made it clear that if they don't come up with X amount of dollars before the end of this season, he's going to walk.
Mm-hmm.
And you could probably say it about Tavares. Although he did take a bit of a hometown discount with going to Toronto.
Yeah.
But he still went for a lot of coin. So I guess my point really is that liking money is not a crime. You can like money and still contribute to the game at the same time.
I think Sidney Crosby is the perfect example of someone who cares more about hockey than the game. Because he took a major discount back in the day to get his contract at $8.7 million. Because he's also superstitious, so he needed that 87. But still, he took a major discount.
Yeah.
And he helped his team because of it. And they won Stanley Cups because he took a discount because they had more money in the bank to get players. So...
Okay, I'm going to run this by you. I think I've asked you this question before, but I don't know if it's been on the air. Sidney Crosby's favorite team growing up was?
Montreal Canadiens.
Do you think it would be a good idea if Montreal were to court Sidney Crosby the next time it was contract renewal and said, look, why stay away from us? Why don't you finish your career as a Canadian, the team you've loved since being a boy, and help us win a cup?
I would love to see that courting in action.
Yeah.
I would swoon.
Would you swoon?
Yeah.
And if you said yes, would you be happy with that?
Oh, definitely.
And you'd be willing to pay what it would cost to bring him?
He wouldn't want much.
No, that's the thing. I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
I think he would do it. And I don't know if any team has ever made this appeal, but there are so many great players who come from Montreal. Martin Brodeur is an example. Le Cavalier is an example.
Lemieux
is an example. If you could get all those guys saying, look, I want to do for my hometown what my hometown has done for me.
Yeah.
And let's all come back, boys, and let's take this thing and put a Stanley Cup back in Montreal.
Yeah.
That would be the most amazing thing ever.
I think Crawford's from Montreal.
Yep, Corey Crawford's from Montreal.
A couple other players as well.
It would be so amazing. Yeah, it would be great. Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Oh, yeah, a few things. That's probably about it for hockey. But I do have, just it being Veterans Day in the U.S. and Remembrance Day in Canada, I just think it's nice to recognize that.
Yeah.
Your mother and I went to the Remembrance Day outdoor services today at the Cenotaph near the town hall, the town center in Stratford, and my goodness, it was cold. I don't think I've been at a Remembrance Day that was that cold.
2013. I went in 2013. It's the last time I went because I got so sick. It rained and it was so cold. I was sick for 3 weeks afterwards, and I missed work because of it.
Well, there was no rain here.
No, it was just windy.
Windy as...
AF.
Windy AF. And it was unbelievable. Like, it was already cold. It was like 32 or 34 degrees Fahrenheit, like 0 plus 1 Celsius. Yeah. And we actually had a wind warning for the entirety of the ceremony. And the wind blew that hard that the microphones were getting the wind, but it was really, really bad. And the place was packed. Just packed, because this is the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I.
That's crazy, eh?
It is crazy. Like when I was a kid, I've been participating in Remembrance Day ceremonies as a Cub Scout, a Boy Scout, an Air Cadet, and then just as a citizen, basically all of my life. My earliest memories are holding the flag in church on the Sunday Remembrance Day service. In Quebec, where I'm from, excuse me, Remembrance Day is not a holiday.
Oh, really?
Really. Remembrance Day, we would go to school like every other day. But at 11 o'clock, we would take a minute's silence. And they would play something over the PA, and then we would be back to school. Okay, get your pencils, kids, and back to school. But what we always did at church was the Sunday just before Remembrance Day, if it wasn't on a Sunday, they would have a special Remembrance Day church service. And the church was packed with veterans who had fought in the First World War.
Well, I remember being in school and seeing World War I vets come in to our assemblies and say some stuff, and we got to look at their medals and everything, and there's none left.
Yeah, and they've been gone for years now.
Yeah.
It's and pretty soon the World War II guys will be gone, and it's just hard to believe.
It really is hard to believe.
When I was at some of these ceremonies and services back when I was a kid, the World War I guys were not only around, they were still in the workforce. They hadn't retired yet. They would be born, let's say, in 1897 or 1898. They'd be going through the war in late teens or early 20s. And by 1965, they're just getting to retirement age.
Yeah.
And it's hard to believe that they're all gone. Like my grandfather, who died in 1990, he was born in 1915. He was only 3 years old when World War I ended. But just the thought of him being 103 years old now, if he were still alive, is just mind-boggling. It's crazy how fast time passes, and really, in a way, how slow it passes and how little we learn.
Absolutely. Right? And soon we'll be talking about veterans from the Korean War. I think that was the next one, right? The Korean War?
After World War II. And Korea was very quickly after World War II. It was 1950 to 1953. Yeah. So the Korean War, the youngest Korean War veteran is probably well in their 70s.
Yeah. And then
maybe in their 80s.
And then...
well, for Canada...
What was next after that?
Well, for Canada, not much. Not much as far as major conflict. But Canada had a lot of peacekeeping troops that went into Egypt and Syria.
Bosnia, I think.
And that would be in the 80s.
Yeah.
Into Bosnia. Canada's troops were in Rwanda, Somalia, all kinds of places. Eritrea, even East Timor.
Not in Vietnam. There was
not so much in Vietnam. There were Canadians in Vietnam, but mostly fighting with the American forces.
Yeah.
Non-citizens can join the U.S. Armed Forces, which is interesting. And I had a friend of mine who became a helicopter pilot for the United States, even though he was a Canadian citizen. And he fought in Vietnam. And Canada had people there, and we had some miniature deployments there. We had some, advisors and other folks that were seconded to the American forces who would have ended up in Vietnam, but we weren't officially there as a whole presence. And then, of course, the Afghanistan business. And then since then, we're still there.
Gulf War was early 90s, late 80s?
Gulf War would be around 1990.
Yeah.
And we were not in on that, actually. We weren't in the coalition. Our leadership at the time in Parliament was not favorable to the coalition.
That was George Bush Sr.?
That would be... yes, George Bush Sr.
Yeah.
He was president from 1989 to 1993. And we were not members of the coalition of the willing.
Of the willing.
Of the willing, that's what they called it. We weren't willing. But we were there for moral support, and I remember watching it on TV. It was quite something. But Canada has a long and distinguished history of helping keep peace in the world, as well as helping bring the deadly force when we had to. So we're pretty proud of our military heritage. And the most interesting thing today, I think, about the Remembrance Day ceremony, which is always the same. It's always the same poems are read in the same 23rd Psalm, and there's the hymns that are read, Abide With Me, and so on. We always sing O Canada, we always sing God Save the Queen at the end, and everything else is the same, but this was different today in one way. The benediction, which is normally delivered by whichever minister or priest did the homily or the sermon part, was this time delivered by the Buddhist monks.
Oh, right.
Because there's a monastery in Prince Edward Island, and there's hundreds of them there doing what it is they do. They do community work and meditation and education and thinking about important things like peace. And they came and did a song and a prayer, a Buddhist prayer, which was really, really interesting. And of course, Buddhists would be practitioners of peace, and this is all about peace, right? It's not to glorify war, it's to pray for peace and to stop all war. And it was really, really well done. But they must have been freezing their AF off because they were dressed in their long robes, and they weren't down to sandals, but they were pretty close. And it was just brutal. The wind was just brutal, and it was hard for them to even stand up.
Jeez, crazy.
They were making a pretty big wind sail. Something. Anyway, it was really something to see them. I hope they do it again soon, because it was really interesting.
Did you see Trump not being able to fold his umbrella? Getting on the plane?
No, I didn't.
And he tries to get on the plane. He's trying to put his umbrella away, and he can't. So he just leaves it. He just sets it on the top of the stairs in the plane, and just gets on the plane. It just lays there on the ground, floating around a little bit.
Well, that's not quite as embarrassing as when he went up the stairs with the toilet paper on his shoe.
Oh, I haven't seen
that.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, people are posting a clip of Justin Trudeau speech, his Remembrance Day speech. He was giving it in the rain, and he had the umbrella above his head, and he took the umbrella down, and he said, like, we sit here in the rain, getting our hair wet and our shoes wet and whatever, and we don't realize what the people in World War One went through, because it was just a brutal war. And so it was cool to see him do that. But he actually did it last year, not this year.
Oh, okay.
But people are posting it now and saying, look what Justin Trudeau did because of what Trump did. Basically the person who posted it saying it's happened this year because Justin Trudeau is trying to poke fun at Donald Trump, but it actually happened a year ago. And anyways, it's just causing a little bit of controversy on Reddit and the internet. But
that's an interesting point about just bad weather generally and what we go through when we stand outside for these presentations and these observances.
Yeah.
Because we can maybe bond a little bit with the dead soldiers who went through such worse conditions.
Such worse.
Such worse. It's unbelievable. The no sleep, cold, wet, laying in the muddy trenches for years.
So much disease and
hardly any food. Disease, lice, rot, and they had a condition back then, and I used to see it in my previous job, conditions of old World War I veterans, called trench mouth. Now, I don't really know what trench mouth is, but I can imagine it's highly unpleasant.
it doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't, and I don't even want to look it up.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just hard for us to imagine. So I think it's good that Remembrance Day, Veterans Day, is on the 11th of November, because it's often, at least in this part of the world, bad weather that day.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Because people are losing a bit of their comfort when they're doing it, and they can have a little bit of connection with the veterans of World War I especially. World War II as well. There was all kinds of horrifying conditions in all war. War itself is a horrifying condition. But it was brutal today, and I felt somewhat at a
bit of a connection.
A bit of a connection with veterans who suffered in the cold. You probably don't. I think I've asked you this before, but I don't think you remember being in Washington at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
I remember pretending to read the names on the thing, just so you guys would think that I was doing something so we could leave. That sounds terrible, but
it does sound terrible.
I was a bored little kid. I was like 7.
It doesn't just sound terrible. It was terrible.
I was 7.
But now there's the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, where there's a bunch of names that you would have maybe pretended to read. But the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is a raid with a bunch of steps, and we saw the changing of the guard.
Yep.
And you remember that part?
Yep.
That's where the American official main ceremony was today for Veterans Day. And whenever I see those, I think of back to when we were all there. The precision, the drill, the inspection of the rifles, and the rifle work, throwing it around, and all of that was just fantastic. I can't wait to go back and see it again.
Yeah, it's cool to watch.
It's really spectacular. The Americans have such a close attention to precision when it comes to things like marching and drill and handling a weapon. It's just amazing.
They put a huge emphasis on band and music.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's really important, because there are so many, like we see in hockey games. We can bring this right back to hockey. Last night, the game between the Golden Knights and the Montreal Canadiens, they did a ceremony because it was Remembrance Day here. They had someone I think was he in the military or the Air Force, or I don't know specifically what he was.
Yeah, he was in the Air Force. He was a Royal Canadian Air Force, and he was stationed at Saint Hubert Air Base in Montreal.
But he sung the national anthem, and he nailed it.
It was fantastic.
Amazing. So
fantastic. There's some great musicians in the military, in the States and in Canada as well. And in the States, like, they have 2 holidays. One is Veterans Day, which is today, the 11th of November. They have also a Memorial Day, which is it's a long weekend in May.
Do they have Labor Day?
Oh yeah, they have Labor Day. So Memorial Day for the Americans is to remember veterans that are passed away, whereas Veterans Day is mainly to honor veterans that are still alive. It's not exclusively that. It's a bit of crossover there, whereas we have both those remembrances basically on one day.
Yeah, which is today.
Yeah, we don't have a Memorial Day in the spring. This is our version of Memorial Day and Veterans Day all rolled into one.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the military, the band thing, that's why I love the Army-Navy game so much. They both have bands.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
They have drum-offs, and they have competitions, so they'll stand right up against, facing each other and just pound away, and then they'll back off, and then the other, the Navy will come up and they'll pound away in their drums, and it's
good stuff. Yeah,
it's fantastic stuff. So that's all coming up. Army-Navy game is next month.
Oh,
baby!
Jeez, it seems like just yesterday we watched the last one.
I can't wait. Go Navy, beat Army.
Anything else?
I think I'm pretty well tapped out. Today was also the Manchester Derby, where Manchester United and Manchester City play each other. They do that. It's a regular thing annually. And in this case, because it was Remembrance Day in Britain as well, they had a big poppy symbol at center field, and they did some poems and things right as part of the opening ceremonies of the soccer game, the football game. And it was nicely done.
I was in the mall yesterday and saw someone walking in I was sitting on a bench, and I was facing doors in the distance, and a guy came in with a huge Manchester City logo on his T-shirt.
Manchester City?
Or what?
United.
No, sorry, Manchester United.
Oh, good.
Logo on his red shirt, the logo on there.
Mm-hmm.
He had his jacket unzipped, I think, just so people could see it. It was cool. So,
well, he was probably as unhappy as I was today, because City beat United 3-1. Oh, it was terrible.
Oops.
Remembrance Day is not just Canada; it's Commonwealth countries generally. Even in a place like busy old Toronto. Pardon me. In Toronto, your grandfather and I were there for business, probably about 30 years ago now. And it just happened to be, it's probably one of the only Remembrance Days I've missed being at the local ceremony, because I was in Toronto and working. And we were staying at a hotel near the airport. And it got close to 11 o'clock, and we were in a restaurant having an early lunch. And I thought, oh yeah, the people up here probably don't even know there's a Remembrance Day.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the staff that we could see in the restaurant were probably immigrants. They were, probably South American, Asian, whatever they were, because the service jobs are typically, go to newcomers to Canada. And you have a flashing light on the camera there. Is that something that's a problem?
I don't know. I probably ran out of space on the card or something.
Uh-oh.
Fine.
Anyway, you just paste up a thing. We're almost done. Anyway, as it turned out, at 11 o'clock, the last post played over the sound system in the entire hotel, and everybody stopped.
Wow.
And did their 2 minutes of silence, and then resumed their work, serving food and whatnot. I was so impressed.
That's impressive, yeah.
I was very impressed.
Huh.
Anyway, okay, I'm good.
All right. Well, it looks like I think the card is full, so you're probably not seeing any video footage of this. So good time to wrap it up anyway. So thanks, guys, for watching as long as you did until it ran out of space. And listening, we really appreciate that. If you leave us a review on iTunes or Google Play Music. If you are not subscribed to the our YouTube channel, that would be awesome if you could hit the subscribe button. Follow us on Twitter at Post2Post Show for myself, and I believe Brent is at VY2HF.
That is correct.
That's right. He's on Twitter. Give him a follow.
Oh, yeah.
Tweet him a tweet or whatever you call it. And are you on Instagram as well?
I am.
Are you VY2HF on Instagram too?
I think on Instagram I'm at Brent VY2HF, I think. I think Instagram required me to have a slightly longer username.
Oh.
So I think I had to do that instead.
I'm on Instagram at Post2Post Show, and also my personal Instagram is NEILTAYLORR. So if you want to follow any of those, that would be awesome. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope you're having a good day, watching lots of hockey, and we'll see you in the next podcast. Adios.